Time is the continuous progression of our changing existence that occurs in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present and into the future. Philosophers in the 17th and 18th century questioned if time was real and absolute, or if it was an intellectual concept that humans use to understand and sequence events. These questions led to realism versus anti-realism. The realists believed that time is a fundamental part of the universe and must be perceived by events happening in a sequence in a dimension. The anti-realists believed that time is merely a conventional intellectual concept for humans to understand events. This means that time was useless unless there were objects that it could interact with. This was called relational time. René Descartes and John Locke and David Hume said that one's mind needs to acknowledge time in order to understand what time is. Immanuel Kant believed that we cannot know what something is unless we experience it firsthand.
We can't start talking about time unless we talk about how humans through the ages have kept track of time. Whether it's a water clock, whether it's a sundial, or digital, whatever type of timepieces we use. I will talk about those in the next couple of minutes. Now, over the years, a large variety of devices have been invented to measure time. The study of these devices is called horology. Now, the first one that we hear about is an Egyptian device called the T-square, a bent T-square. It measured the passage of time from the shadow cast by its crossbar on a non-linear rule. The T was oriented eastward in the mornings. At noon, the device was turned around so that it could cast a shadow in the evening direction. Now, the next device we hear about in history is a sundial. Now, many civilizations use the sundial. It uses a gnomon, which is the crosspiece that casts the shadow from the sun, and it sets this shadow on a set of markings calibrated to the hour. The position of the shadow marks the hour in local time. The idea to separate the day into smaller parts is credited to the Egyptians because of their sundials, which operated on a duodecimal system. The importance of the number 12 is due to the number of lunar cycles in a year and the number of stars used to count the passage of night. Now, the most precise timekeeping device of the ancient world was the water clock, or clepsydra, which I may have pronounced wrong, folks. I apologize if I did. One of these, which was found in the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep I. They could be used to measure the hours even at night, but required manual upkeep to replenish the flow of water. Now, before we move on, did you know that in the 11th century, Chinese inventors and engineers invented the first mechanical clocks driven by an escapement mechanism? To avoid confusion, let me explain. An escapement is the mechanical linkage in mechanical watches and clocks. It gives impulses to the timekeeping element and periodically releases the gear train to move forward, which advances the clock hands. Now, of course, mechanical clocks would include the clocks that you put on your arm, which had hands pretty much using the same armatures, but also we have digital clocks that you wear on your arms. But the most accurate timekeeping device is called the atomic clock. These are accurate to seconds in many millions of years and are used to calibrate other clocks and timekeeping instruments.
There is something called imaginary time. This was from the late Stephen Hawking, who said that space and imaginary time are finite, but have no boundaries. Imaginary time is not real or unreal. It is something that is hard to visualize. Philosophers can agree that physical time exists outside of the human mind and is objective, and psychological time is mind-dependent and subjective. Did you know that a child's expanding cognitive abilities allow them to understand time more clearly? 2- and 3-year-olds understand that time is mainly limited to now and not now. while 5 and 6-year-olds can grasp the ideas of past, present, and future, and 7-year-olds up to the age of 10 can use clocks and calendars. It's interesting to see that psychologists assert that time seems to go faster with age. But the literature on this age-related perception of time still remains controversial. Those who support this notion argue that young people have more excited neurotransmitters and are able to cope with faster events. I know in my age, it does feel like as I get older, time goes faster. What do you think?